al-Fiqh is synergized between those tendencies as well. Usul al-Fiqh has always been the integrating science. But sometimes there's things that are, remember we said, like we talked about the issue of excess. Sometimes there's an excess from one discipline over another. Like in this issue, you know, when you start talking about the mutawatir, okay, this is like the infiltration of ilm al-kalam and usul into hadith sciences. The discussion now may not make a lot of sense, but later on it makes sense. So you have, like even in this issue here, so this is the third thing. After you go through this whole process of, okay, you type the hadith, what type is it? Then you go through here, you classify the hadith from the angle, do we accept it or we reject it? And finally the issue comes over, what about action on the hadith? So there's that hadith which is differed over by the ulama. Some say we can, some say we can't. There's that hadith which is clear cut, is muhkim. Yes, we can. And there's the hadith which is abrogated or abrogating. It cancels out the other narrations. What came before it. So when you go through this process, you know, this is a multi-tiered process before we get to the issue of can we accept the hadith in Aqidah or practice? And that's where that has its own debates. For a long time, some of the scholars were saying Ahad hadith is not accepted in Aqidah issues. That's where Aqidah kind of, the ilm al-kalam kind of overrode, or, you know, that's where it is important to understand these things. That's what, matter of fact, that's the biggest debate right now between the Salafis and the Ash'aris and Maturidis. It's the issue of the Ahad hadith when it comes to issues of Aqidah. Remember we said that Usul al-Fiqh has a theory of language? Who remembers that? How you deal with language? That's the other point of the debate. Is there metaphor in the language when it comes to the names of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala or no? That's why I said learn the basics framework of Usul al-Fiqh. Then when it's time to pull out your tool for the battle, when you have to go into the battle of the the debates, you're standing on solid ground. Hold on a second. Don't bring me that nonsense. I'm here. My purpose here is I'm here in the process of reviving the ummah and dealing with people. If you want to stay in the academic debates, stay in the academic debates. That has no issue with me. I understand the debate. You're stuck on not understanding the debate, so you have no respect. You know what I'm saying? You're stuck with saying this person is mujassim. There's some brothers now that revived it on the East Coast. Now the Salafis were declining on the East Coast a little bit, and they're not in their numbers, but influence. So now the Ash'aris mutakallimin coming, mujassima. It's like, brother, don't you see Philadelphia is the most populated Muslim city? It's a mess. There's killing, there's disaster, there's all this, and you're focused on calling this person a mujassima or that, right? So you don't look at the issue of language. Some scholars said in the language that there was not metaphor. So what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? So you have to have respect for that system. And that's why Ibn Taymiyyah took that approach. It's not that he didn't say that there's no metaphor at all. Remember we talked about the issue of excess? Some of them, like if you have this, and this is a dog. That's what it is, a dog. In order for you to say that it's not a dog, you have to have a proof to say, well, this is not a dog. Right? This is a symbol for friend. Loyal friend. Right? In order for you to be able to go from the dog to loyal friend, you have to have some evidence that's going to support that literal change. What's up, dog?
Yeah, and it's funny because I did the opposite. Dog could also mean you're a dog, man. Like you're like so it's like what's the usage of it? How
yes. Yeah. So that's the issue. The issue of usage. What is the criteria for usage? Is the criteria for usage that any time period anybody's going to come and give meaning to the word and so on and so forth? So some of the scholars said no. We have it bracketed off. Pre-Islam, and maybe about 1 to 2 generations out, this is considered the generational period. We're just going to slam these generations together. That is considered referential for language usage in the Arabic language. And we talked about that a little bit in the summer program. When you know that there is a generational, a bracketed off generational referential group, pre-Islam and even in Islam, for how language is used. When you know that, for instance, in the language, there's the concept of debate about to what extent do we have metaphor in the language, what extent we don't. When you know that there's a difference between the ahad, hadith, and mutawatir, and how it is that they construct the arguments on that, you don't have Aqidah debates. You know what I'm saying? You don't have Aqidah debates. You understand how they constructed their position. So while this one is saying this is it, and that one is saying that's it, you say, I understand how you constructed your position. I have respect for it. I may agree or may not agree based on the evidence. I have other things to do. I'm trying to save a burning house. You may not like that I'm talking like that because you want to stay on the philosophical, but at the end of the day, after all is said and done, amal is what the goal to the knowledge is. You know, and that's why sometimes I stay very reserved when it comes to that. Because remember we said that the experience of deen during the time of the revelation of the Quran and the manifestation of the Sunnah, the time period of Risala, is much more fluid than sometimes what happens with the ulama. That was the whole issue of these debates. They were trying to reconstruct the experience. But you can't reconstruct the experience only by just staying stuck in debates of the ulama. That's why Dr. Taha Jabir said that, you know, don't take your deen, لا تأخذ الدين من السجالة. Don't take your deen from, you got to realize, if you don't have a historical understanding, if you don't look at what was going on in the time period, the only authoritative time period is the time period of revelation. But if you don't look at, for instance, what were the Muslims like psychologically post 9/11, pre 9/11? Just give us our example. You see the psychology. There was decisions that were taken in the Muslim community predicated upon their same thing with the time period of the Tatar. So these mukhtasar texts, these small texts, they also come out of a certain cultural reality. Sometimes these texts come out of the fact that one group will invade another group. And so you need to have something that you can easily memorize to have the knowledge to preserve the deen. You can go and recreate. Because they will burn each other's stuff. That's not uncommon. You know what I'm saying? You look at the time period, one of the most detrimental things in the Muslim world, it has not been, if you look back historically, today is different than in the past. Actually, the rationalists were some of the most violent people. They're like Nazis. You know, if you look at how they dealt with some of the groups, there's always been that tension. That has been one of the detrimental points. Al-Andalus collapsed because of that. Al-Andalus completely collapsed because of these debates between people. It led to that point. So once you have the tools, you don't have that issue. So for instance, for the classification, once you have the tools, you know how the